Hi Dollar Divas, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I'm Jessica and I love to do a lot of Dollar Tree oriented makeup and shopping videos. So if that sounds good to you, you're definitely in the right place. Definitely make sure you hit the subscribe button down over here in the corner of the screen and hit that bell notification, that way you don't miss a future upload. So today I'm gonna be duping the new Natasha Denona Pastel Palette, and I'm gonna be using mostly Dollar Tree eyeshadow. And these videos, I feel, just help us go back into our collection and really see how much we actually do have and how sometimes repetitive some of these palettes are. And I know we're all a sucker for packaging and a color story. I definitely am myself. But I do love these videos because for me personally, it helps me look at my collection differently and open up palettes that I maybe haven't seen for a while, and even come up with new looks, because this look here that I'm wearing is a look using some of these colors, a look that you could probably get with this palette. So I love doing these videos for that reason, and it's just being mindful about our collection and just showing you what you can do. And you don't even have to have everything that I have. You look through your own collection and see how close you can come. So these are fun for me. So yeah, without any further chit chat, let's just go ahead and get into it. So we'll have the palette up here and we'll go along. So this first color here is like a kind of a salmon-y pink matte shade. So I just received a bunch of goodies from one of my lovely Dollar Divas here on YouTube, Miss Tina. And so she sent this palette to me that she found at her Dollar Tree. This is in the Color Story Poster Child. I thought this shade here was a really, really nice dupe. So that's the first shade we got right there so far. So the second shade here is called Illusion. And it looks, in some of the pictures that I see, it looks very much like a kind of a frosty white. But the pictures that Natasha Denona put out from the website, like the official pictures, it looks like it might have a slightly pink shift. From the Dollar Tree recently, I found this Believe Beauty highlighter, and it's in the shade Pop of Pink, and you probably can't see it on camera, but it's got a little bit of a pink sheen. It's a highlighter. And there is nothing wrong with using a highlighter or using products for something other than what they were intended for. So I think this is actually the best thing that I have in my collection personally. So if you don't have an eyeshadow that fits the bill, definitely try out your highlighters or your blushes even. So this next shade here is called Mint Frost, and it's kind of a sagey medium green shimmer. So a shade that I think is a close dupe, and this is actually one of the shades that I have on my lids at the moment, is in this LA Colors Lucky palette. And I'm thinking the shade right there, the second one in, is a very decent dupe. So there is what we have so far. So now the shade Bora. Recently I hauled and did a look with this palette here. This is from the Dollar Tree. It's the Wet n Wild palette in Pedal Pusher. And I think this shade here is a really, really close dupe. So there is what we've got so far. That purple and that green are gorgeous. Then the shade right next to it is called Dainty. And it looks to be about like a shimmery mauve type of shade. So I'm going into this LA Colors 12-pan eyeshadow palette. This is in Chic. I also did a look with this recently. So I think this shade here in the LA Colors Chic palette, right there on the end, is probably the closest dupe I have in my collection. You might have a slightly better dupe in your collection. So that is what I have right there. Probably not a perfect dupe, but again, it kind of dupes the vibe of that shade. So the next one is not using Dollar Tree eyeshadow, but it's using the Profusion Festival palette. And these are affordable anyway. Of course, if you're familiar with Profusion eyeshadows, you know they're affordable. But I got this one at a place called the Burks Outlet for $7.99, which you absolutely can't beat. So very affordable, even at full price. And so the shade Brisk is kind of like a pastel greenish blue, kind of like a seafoam. And I thought this shade here in my personal collection, this shade right here, it's called Hipster, is the closest thing that I had. This is a slightly newer palette to my collection. I got it at some point, kind of a little bit past the middle of the year, and I love this palette so much. So that is what I have for that. Again, I think that is a perfect dupe. So the next shade is called Adriatic. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's kind of like a bright shimmery teal or a bright shimmery kind of a seafoam color. And I'm actually gonna go back into the Festival palette. In fact, if you look at both of those colors in the palette, the one right above it, so it's kind of a shimmery, a slightly darker version of the color before it. So the next shade is called Starlet. So I'm gonna go into this LA Colors Playful palette. And in the pan, it doesn't actually look like it, but in the swatch, this one right here in the middle is a close dupe, I feel. So there it is right there next See that beautiful shimmery bluish green? And that's kind of what I try to do. I mean, I'll go off the pan, and then ultimately the swatch dictates what I pick. Because ultimately on the eye, that is the result, you know what I mean? Then the next shade is called Bellini, and it's kind of like a matte peachy orange. So I'm going to this little eyeshadow palette by LA Colors and going into this shade down here on the end. There we go. That is a very good dupe, I feel. Then the next shade is called Bubble, and it looks kind of like a satiny blue. So I've got these two palettes here. This is the LA Colors 12 pan palette in Supernatural, and back into the Wet n Wild Poster Child palette. So this shade right here, I think is a good dupe, as well as this shade right here. So here is what they both look like. And I'm just gonna go ahead and use Supernatural just because it's more readily available. So that is what I got with that. Then the next shade is called Cello, and it's kind of like a shimmery yellow. So the two shades I have aren't shimmery, but I do feel they will dupe the vibe. So of course this color here in the LA Colors Urban palette, and this color here in the Poster Child palette. So here are both of the shades. Again, very, very, very similar. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and go in the one that's in the Urban palette, just again, because it's more readily available. I like to show you guys things that are a little bit easier to attain. So for this next shade here, it's called Duet. I feel I have 3 good dupes in this LA Colors Chic palette. And I think ultimately the one I'm gonna go with is right here. So that is what the swatch looks like. Then the shade Airy is a really light pastel blue matte. So one of the dupes comes from this bubblegum palette, but then for a Dollar Tree version, we also have this shade right here in the Urban palette. And I think either one of these shades here in the Supernatural palette would also work. There are the 4 shades. And ultimately I'm gonna go with this 3rd shade here that was in the LA Colors Supernatural palette. And then Zest. This was one of the harder colors, but luckily I have the BH Pistachio palette. And it's a kind of like a matte lime green. This shade right here, it is called Soft Serve, and I would say that that is a perfect dupe. Then the last shade is kind of like a pastel pink with a slightly maybe lilac tone in it, and I'm going back into this Poster Child palette by Wet n Wild and going into this shade right here. And there's that last swatch. So I will put up some swatches that I found, but we definitely duped the vibe of this pastel palette. And yeah, I think we did really, really, really well. And of course, using all Dollar Tree and affordable eyeshadow. I didn't have to dig into any of my high-end eyeshadow to find any of these colors. And if you want to see more videos like this, click on this playlist right up here. It has any video I've ever done that is just like this, where I dupe eyeshadow palettes with things that I have in my collection already. So if you enjoyed this video, show me you did by hitting the like button. Definitely share this video with anybody you think may benefit from it. It helps me and my channel out so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.